So Van, man, what's been going on with you, brother? It's been a while since we saw each other last.
Yeah.
Um,
Before I ran to you at Bramares, what was it? Probably 2 years plus.
yeah,
I
exactly.
know.
And I'm glad we did because long time coming. I've been meaning to catch up with what's going on. Real quick, 595 Craft and Kitchen, kind of like my favorite place to go and have a quick bite. That's your baby. You're also owner of Able Baker. You got a couple other projects.
Sure.
Let's start with 595. Was that kind of your first big project that, ownership and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. That was my first foray into restaurant ownership. I moved from San Diego to Vegas in I think beginning of 2017, like January, and so I signed the lease to 595 November 2016, and so I waited for 2 months before I moved out. We were trying to get permits and the planning and all those things in place. And then finally moved out there. I lived inside of that unit inside 595 while it was under construction for the first couple months because we didn't have an apartment yet. So I wake up in the morning, do demo, and then pitch a sleeping bag in the corner, and then sleep there, for a couple weeks. For actually, it was January through March, so it was 2 months.
Wow. So building that out, did you have a lot of say in like how, because I know your culinary background, right?
No, I'm not.
No,
So my background actually is In-N-Out Burger.
really.
So yeah, I started working at In-N-Out when I was around 17 years old, and then worked my way up through management there, and they have an amazing training program. I mean, they taught me everything I needed to know to operate a business, right? I mean, to prepared me to run 595. So I quit after I think 10 years. I just didn't want to do fast food anymore, and I knew like this is going to be my lane, but I just can't do fast food. It just doesn't seem like it's giving me the fulfillment that I'm looking for. Um, and I didn't see it getting better because it's fast food.
Right.
But it's very rewarding as far as the training went and the culture that I learned. Work with amazing people, had amazing mentors, so it's a great experience. But I just wanted something more than just working in a fast food environment. So after I quit there, I took on a job as a consultant for F&B for like mom and pop shops, and that's where I learned about the how the money moves in full service environment. So like pricing strategies for bar, beer, wine, liquor, food costs in the real world, and things like that. So I was helping people figure out what the industry standards are for their cost of goods and labor and inventory and things like that.
Even though this is you like figuring it out for the
Yeah.
first time too.
So I was given like data, like I basically just signed on so I could like have access to a database, right? And then I was just analyzing the data while I was learning like, all the inner workings of like a full service environment. So once I put those things together, I created some models to see how much I would need to make and create a business plan for 595. Actually, when we first moved to Vegas, we were planning on building out a brewery, but based on my market research and my conversations with the brewers and bar managers and owners in the community, I realized that they had no shortage of beer coming into the market. What the shortage was having handles to pour craft beer out of. So I didn't want to open up a brewery and compete in the same space when there's not enough handles to represent craft beer.
Really? Yeah.
So I pivoted to do a craft beer pub instead of a brewery because of that.
Huh. Okay. So you originally kind of felt like, because eventually we'll talk about Abel Baker, but you had that kind of in the back of your sort of like dream scenario. I own a brewery, and then you're witnessing all this data, and then you're like, okay, well, let's fix this problem first, right?
Yeah.
Have this tap heads, which I mean, if you haven't been to 595 Craft and Kitchen in Las Vegas, amazing beers, really cool, always rotating. And I love it because you can tell when something's been off. So you guys slap it on like the
Yeah.
kitchen door when it's the label for the beer, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I missed that one. And I'm a big sour guy,
Yeah.
and it's hard to find a lot of spots that'll have. If they have one sour, you're lucky.
Right.
But even like working at Yard House for many years, we didn't always have a sour on the menu. We had like one sour and that's it. So when I go to your place, I know there's going to be two or three sours, different levels of sourness, um, which I could learn a lot. I love to learn a little bit more about sour beers in general and kind of the process for that. If you're, if you're feeling like talking about that, because it's one of those things. Like I love sour beers, but I also have ones that I like. They're too heavy, or I feel like it's like the Flanders ones
Hmm.
that are like if they go overboard on a certain like sour pungency, it's almost like not good. Like it's like bad flavor to me. And
Yeah.
what dictates that sour level? Like what's the process for that?
Well, it's so it's a bacteria called lactobacillus. You add that in, and it basically just adds acidic acid to the beer, and that's where you get the perceived sour note. There's also other ways for you to make sour beers, like adding funk, like adding Brettanomyces, that like basically gives you that kind of like that band-aidy, I would say, like that the quality when you taste it and it tastes like band-aids,
Yeah, kind of like a
so
Lagavulin
it adds some
Scotch
funk to it.
reminds me.
So I guess it depends on the style, but American sours typically they'll introduce like some kind of bacteria like lactobacillus into it, and it's a really a lot of brewers are cautious to do that because having adding that kind of bacteria into the beer, like it's a very powerful. It'll dominate all the other strains
Right.
of bacteria in the air, so it could potentially contaminate other batches of beer if it's not properly sanitized, those tanks, you know.
Oh yeah, because like
So
residual, like you have to be
yeah,
really
because
thorough
I mean,
on.
all it takes is just one molecule, and then it'll start consuming, and it'll overtake any other bacteria in that brew house. So it could.
Ollie, I need you to stop, buddy, please. Oh,
So
the dog's whining. He's getting annoyed with no attention. Sorry about that.
you get. I was like, is that my ear?
I know. No, I'm like, he's like, is it the
Yeah,
equipment? I'm like,
yeah.
no, he's just being a big baby over there.
So yeah, I mean, I guess with American style sours, lactobacillus is like the main component of it that adds the souring, and then they'll add like fruit and they'll add like lactose to give it like that mouthfeel, that creaminess in the sours.
So when I have a sour, am I getting lactose?
It depends. Lactose is one of the like a newer form of sours that became popularized with, I think like 450 North is one of the I think like pioneers of like lactose sours.
Yeah.
Unless I'm wrong, I don't know. But they've
Someone will
become
let us
really
know
really
if you are.
popular. Yeah, they become really really popular. But the old school sours like the Belgian style sours and things like that, there's no additives. It's just letting kind of Mother Nature, like the wild fermentation, you just leave it open, and whatever bacteria in the atmosphere kind of inoculates and does its thing.
Okay.
So there's a wide range of it.
I I uh I mean, God, there's so many intricacies in the chemistry that goes into like any kind of distillation or fermentation, but like brew houses aren't given enough credit for how much actual science is going in, or maybe not that they're not getting credit, but I don't think people realize how much, you're knowing different strands of these yeasts, and to me that kind of like uh, that lost knowledge that people, or I shouldn't say lost, it's like there's just people aren't aware,
Yeah,
and
I think it's also with technology and the internet and things like that. A lot of scientists, which I would consider them scientists for sure, for you to know how to brew beer and do that consistently, you have to be technically capable, but you have to understand the science behind it. So they're effectively like chemists in some forms.
yeah.
So I think there's a lot of technicalities that go into it. The people that can produce at broad scale and create consistent product, I think those people really understand the science behind it.
So then, what goes into selecting what beers go on that back chalkboard? It's not a chalkboard, but it's like what do you call that? It's like laminates, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's basically just I don't know, the beer menus.
Yeah.
But so how we created it is we have a matrix that has yeah, we have a matrix that has certain beer styles on whatever those handles are. So 1 through 24, we have 24 handles beers, right? Or 24 tap handles. So when a keg kicks, we want to have a beer that we replace the existing one with that's similar to that style. That way we have, variety of styles represented. So we have like pale ales, IPAs, we have lagers, we have a brown and a red ale, right? So like some styles that are maybe not as popular, we'll have only one of, and then like IPAs, Northeast IPAs, which are hazies, we'll have like, three, four of those. It's really dependent on the season and, what's really moving, what's pulling through. So we have a matrix, and then whatever styles open up, that's what we try to look for through the distributors.
And then are you like, what's the trend right now? What's everyone going for? Is because like I think sours are for like beer nerd more so, but like when I hang out with most people, they're not interested in sour. They're like, oh, I don't really like sour. So it's kind of like one of those niche things. Like, what's the trend? What's the big thing?
Yeah, so I think the trend hasn't changed that much in the last 7 years. When I first opened up, we had three, four West Coast IPAs. We had a couple hazy IPAs. We only had one or two lagers of Pilsner style beers, like lighter style beers on, and that still holds true. I would say, if anything, I moved away from so many hazies and started featuring more of the lighter style beers because I think if there was one trend, I think that was a trend. We had that explosion of the flavored sours like lactose sours, which are like kind of smoothies, and milkshake sours is what some people call them. And if you ever buy a can of beer, and you got to roll it up or agitate it, that's how you know it's like one of those fruited beers, fruited sours. It's
Okay.
because like the fruit pulp or whatever, it'll like separate, so it'll like stratify and like collect at the top, and then you got to shake it up to kind of make it more homogeneous again. So,
Wow.
I'm not personally not a huge fan of it. I get it. It's a really good like they taste like fruit smoothies, and I think it's great to get people into craft beer who might have not been interested otherwise. But I think it takes away from what people traditionally consider beer. So I'm more of a traditionalist. I like Trumer is a really great beer. I like Able Baker's like El Pato and our Excited State Pilsner.
Yeah.
Like I'm more of a minimalist, so I like just simple flavors.
Yeah, and that's kind of like to me, that's like the epitome of beer. Is like when I come home and it's been like a busy day. It's like the first thing I drink is like if I'm gonna have something like that, it's I chug like half of a. It doesn't matter if it's like a Corona level of a beer, Pacifico, what have you. But like Pato Loco is that Cerveza that I was enjoying when I was working at Chica, and that's like that flies off the shelf at Chica. So, and they also keep your Atomic Duck on that, which I feel like is like the epitome of a traditional kind of like straight down the road IPA. You know, not too bitter,
Yeah.
bitter enough. We were talking about hazies, which I feel like was a huge pop for a while.
Yeah.
But now I'm noticing. Now I'm noticing a lot more like you were saying, saison, right? That to me is when I'm really trying to enjoy a beer, and you don't drink those as fast. Like lager, I'm like slamming, or, like can't help it. It's just like it's like drinking almost like strong water, where I'm just
Right.
like
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
thirst quenching. But saison is more of like, man, you can really talk about certain notes in it and have fun with like those different things, which haven't tried enough saison to really explain how vastly different they can be. I've had a few. I want to say DuPont was one of my favorites that I've had. And I hope is this going to come through on the mics? Like, yeah, sorry. Dog technical difficulties. He's being in a mood today. Jeez. You can never plan on these things. But yeah, so let's speak a little bit about the food at Able Baker as well. My lord, do you have some good dishes? Now, who comes up with those?
Well, it's mostly me. With
With
five
no
nine five,
background
yeah, no culinary
in
background.
culinary.
Yeah, so how I came up with the menu at 595, actually, one of the restaurants that I was doing consulting for in San Diego, became friends with one of the executive chefs, and I told him what my dream was with the brewery, and then when I pivoted over to doing, craft beer pub, I told them, hey, this is kind of like the lane that I want to go down towards, which was a combination of my heritage, my culture, being being raised as Vietnamese American and eating mostly Vietnamese food, but then going to work at In-N-Out Burger, and then seeing like the mishmash of different cuisines, like the fusion of it all in the San Diego pub scene back in the day. I was really intrigued with that.
Is your family like? Do they do a lot of traditional cooking in your house?
They they did growing up, but I never really got the recipes. I just what I carried with me into 595 were like some of like the really popular items like the banh mi, and we did a vermicelli noodle salad. It was just flavors that I was like very nostalgic, and I thought would pair well with beer. And then so I told my chef buddy about that, and so we came up with some recipes together. And then I just looked up, did a lot of googling and YouTubing of dishes that my grandma would cook, because she wouldn't measure anything, and I'm very process oriented. So I had a hard time trying to replicate her recipes, because she's telling me to use a thumb worth of ginger, but we all have different thumbs. You know what I mean? So like, I just weigh it out for me, grandma. So I decided it was just easier to just research those dishes, and put together, create recipes based off that. So, I had some recipes from the family after kind of coming up with it on my own, and then I showed it to my chef buddy, who what he did was kind of streamline it, or tailored it so that way it could be, I guess, produced in a commercial kitchen.
Okay.
Changed up some of the ingredients that were a little bit more difficult to source into with like vendors that carried it as like a regular item instead of having to do special orders. So he did stuff like that for me before I understood how working with food distributors worked. And then once I was left to kind of run that kitchen, because my buddy's from San Diego. So after we opened up, um, it's nice. It's a nice cocktail, dude. A nice mocktail. Looks great.
Mocktail, so kind of fun thing about doing this bar. Van's taking a little break from drinking right now, so I figured we'd throw together some fun stuff, just trying things out. To me, non-alcoholic cocktails are super easy and don't have to be so elaborate. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense. You're at a craft cocktail bar, you want this elaborate non-alc, but like my specialty is kind of like, if anything, is winging it in life, because it's like people come in and want so many non-alcs now, especially like you said, you're just taking a break just to get healthy and stuff. And that's kind of been a big trend that I've noticed, is low ABV and no ABV cocktails. Is huge, way bigger than they've ever been in my experience. And it's been like the last couple years, really. I feel like it was like after people came off of COVID and it went heavy drinking. And then they're like, wow, that was pretty crazy couple years of drinking. So now it's like people are dialing back and trying to be a little more responsible. Which is great. And that's what's funny, is there's a lot of like revenue and there's money, and it kind of doesn't make sense to not have at least one or two non-alcoholic cocktails on your menu, but you don't have to have it on the menu. And you could have these really cool, like Verjus. First of all, I have to buy some. I have to find it. I think it's probably in like the international market or something like that. But Verjus, which is a alternative to vinegar, is wonderful. Like I love to use it. I was actually hoping I would have it for this podcast today, but it gives a nice like acidity and stuff, but without actually being a vinegar. And then the super sour is fun because you get that acid, and the beauty of having things that are shelf stable, helps all the time, because you
And it's much easier to control and create a consistent cocktail with it.
exactly. And then I almost always like to do like bubbles, some sort of bubble. Like this one's just club soda, but Fever Tree makes a list of great sodas that you use that. You use a few ingredients, possibly like muddle in some mint, do something like that. You do a fruit, and boom, you've got a signature cocktail. Can't charge as much as you do for a cocktail like a regular one, but
You can charge pretty close.
like $8-10 is like very fair.
Yeah.
And you get that experience. Well, so cheers.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Little blueberry syrup, sort of just a mojito take, a little bit of lime. Pretty simple.
Tasty.
Yeah. Yeah, really nice.
That's
Oh,
a
and I
great-
put in,
That's a great fall drink.
right? And I put in a dash of Fee Brothers aromatic bitters. Fee Brothers, though, has a couple ingredients I'm not like crazy about. They're one of the only bitters that are non-alcoholic, which is crucial. You need a non-alcoholic bitter at bars these days, because it just adds so much complexity with one dash, you know, and kind of makes this cocktail really fun.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so talking about, just want to finish up with that food because man, I'm obsessed with the banh mi you put on there. Just your signature banh mi, the pork.
Yeah.
Oh man, that has got to be one of my favorite sandwiches. The problem is, I can't just have that because I also want like a chicken sandwich or a pastrami sandwich there. So I have to go with at least one friend, and we do like the you get one,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
get the other.
Splitsies.
Cut, yeah,
I love it.
splitsies, exactly. And I just got to say, I find myself at 595 more than any other spot in town for like nice quick meal. You know, not trying to go crazy, not trying to go to the strip. And I just, man, go in there. You got great bartenders. Marvin's one of my favorite guys there. And he runs the bar program there too, correct?
Yeah, so he runs the cocktail side, which he's taken off in a little bit here, probably in the next couple months. He's opening up his own concept.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's creating a speakeasy, like a garage or like auto shop themed speakeasy. It's going to be located off of Spring Mountain in Decatur.
Good spot.
Yeah,
Really
good
good
spot.
spot.
It's really interesting. I mean, it sounds like an amazing concept. I'm really gunning for him. I told him if he needs any help, just reach out. But I think he's part of a great restaurant group. And we're excited to see what happens in the next few months here with him. But so that means we're going to lose him too. So, we've, I don't have any background. I don't have any training with, cocktails or nor have I bartended. My only real bartending experience and serving experience for that matter is what I had like covering shifts at 595. And it's
Yeah.
been years since I worked a line position there. So I'm more or less kind of useless there now, which is an amazing thing to say.
Yeah, I
Because
find
I
that
never
very.
thought never thought I'd get out of the kitchen there for the first few years that I worked there, because it was just so demanding and it was such a big learning curve, right? Going from managing millions of dollars of ingredients of like 10 ingredients at In-N-Out
Yeah.
to managing hundreds of ingredients in a full service kitchen, and then now having to learn about the service, the flow, pacing and all those things, right?
Yeah,
It was
and
just a
it's easy to
massive
waste. Like you
undertaking.
can easily put yourself in trouble when if you're throwing out product, you over order, things go bad. So it's a daunting task. And like I know you opened up Able Baker, which we'll go into next, but we also got to touch on like the other projects. I can't believe how many things you're doing right now. We'll come back to Able Baker, but like tell me, you had a deli.
Yeah, so we opened up a deli about 6 months ago, and it's 4 doors north of Able Baker Brewing. Um, you know, there's a small there's a small spot where the one that we took over. We wanted to bring some more affordable options into the arts district area. We've had a lot of great concepts open up, but they're all kind of like higher ticket costs, right? Like,
Yeah.
Esther's pretty, just like casual fine dining or whatever. You have Main Street Provisions, amazing food, but that's also more of like a high end, sit down restaurant.
Okay.
And so we wanted to do something that cater to the blue collar and the community within like the 2 mile radius. A lot of residents and employees there told me that they were getting priced out of that community, and that's something that I've seen in San Diego too. So
That's kind of a trend of yours then, huh? Like making affordable but still elevated concepts. Is that kind of like your goal is to not be one of those restaurants that are trying to get every nickel and dime they can?
yeah, I mean we're our businesses are for profit, so it
Right,
has
of
to start with
course.
that. But I the goal is to hopefully generate profit and achieve financial success as a byproduct of you trying to do things the right way, and not have that be the singular goal. And for me, I preach what I learned from In-N-Out when I try to govern my restaurant. Just is you focus on quality, focus on service, and you focus on the ambiance and the vibe.
Yeah.
That's front of house. The back of house, quality, cleanliness, organization, maintenance. Just keeping things in order. That way, you have integrity behind your operation. And if we take care of those basics, I've preached to my staff that if we take care of all these things and we do right good job with that, we should have an honest shot at surviving and,
Right.
and thriving. Honestly, and to this point, it's proving itself out.
And that's called the District Deli and Coffee?
District Deli and Coffee.
Yeah, nice.
So it's like an 800 square foot hole in the wall. We do coffee, we do smoothies, and we do Italian style sandwiches, hot and cold. And it's walk up service. We only have 6 seats inside the dining space, so it's a small spot. And as we like I said, we wanted to do something where the community and the employees can come back and start enjoying that area with all the development that's happening. It's amazing to see that space be revitalized, but we also don't want to gentrify it to the point where we're losing the heart and soul of that, what it made it what it is, right?
Right. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're like, if we don't get this place to be exciting and fun, then it dies anyways. Like, like that finding the balance between, like, you're not trying to go, hey, I'm not trying to change the heartbeat of this area. But I mean, that area was underdeveloped for a long time.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, that's like kind of near Esther's, right? Like, sort of.
Yeah, Esther's is on the north end of Main Street, like in the what I would consider as like the heart of the Arts District, which is Main Street from Wyoming, which is where we're at. We're on like the south end of the Arts District.
Sure.
We're technically considered the Gateway District, but I don't think people really care about that.
Like,
It's like just
the
lumped
Gateway
together.
District because it's going to like Fremont.
It's the gateway to the Arts District, and then yeah,
Oh, I see.
which is I don't even know what the technical like boundaries of Gateway is, but we're all lumped into the same thing as far as most people are concerned.
Right.
But I think it's like a six block stretch north south from where we're at to where Esther's Kitchen is at, and I would say Esther's Kitchen is on the north end of the Arts District. North of Charleston is like a lot of developments happening, and there's some quality concepts, but I think there's that Charleston really does cut off like the continuity of all the concepts.
Right. I bring up Esther's because that's kind of what I feel like. That's when I started hearing and understanding, oh, the Arts District's a place to check out. It was kind of like when Esther's first became something. Like, that's when I remember. But I'm not a downtown guy in general, which I know that's much more of your stomping grounds. But what would you say was the catalyst that kind of got that whole shift over to, Arts District, having that be the new? Because I mean, back in my heyday, it
I
was.
probably agree with you. Esther's definitely brought a lot more awareness and a lot more traffic into that area. But no, there were some quality concepts that existed before them. I think that maybe they just, it was more of like a cult following. Um, what was that? Velveteen. They were around for probably 3 or 4 years before Esther's opened up.
Okay, and that's true. Now I think about Velveteen. I'm like, okay, that was another name
Yeah.
that I've been hearing for years. And it's like I live on this is my home, and this is the opposite end of the town
Yeah.
for that.
Yep.
So, and trying to be responsible while also not spending fortune on Ubers, kind of limits which way you go and how much you can do, So it is funny how many people in the industry live in that area now. There's so many jobs, so it makes sense to be walking distance for a beverage person, but also it's pretty wild that's such a nightlife that there's people that live down there because they're down there at like Hard Hat and they're down there checking out Able Baker, and you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty funny to me the group of people that have like migrated and become there's a whole city within a city there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Arts District really cool. In my mind, there's only two places in Vegas that have that unique, like, scaling of high density and nightlife or retail or food and beverage, like that's walkable like that, right? It's Arts District and Water Street,
Yeah.
right? And they're going through their own, they're having their own moment down there too, which is
Yeah.
amazing to see. And I was a part of a restaurant group down there as well during COVID, but I've since left that, so I got to see the amount of effort and the amount of coordination from the city and small businesses and things like that are pushing towards that same common goal. And there's a lot of similarity between what's going on down there in the Arts District. So, coming from San Diego, where every neighborhood has its own kind of strip like that, like what Arts District is.
Yeah.
I really wanted to be a part of that. So when the opportunity came to be, I was like, dude, let's make it happen. I've been trying to figure out how to get into the Arts District area. So, this is a no-brainer for me.
I mean, I like how your brain works. You're kind of always looking. You're not satisfied with just like, okay, we're doing well at 595. So I don't need it. You're like, all right, well, we did well at that. Let's start my brewery. Okay, you're part of Able Baker. Then you're like, well, it's not enough. I need more. Let me get a deli going down here. It's like, what makes you able to do, what makes your bandwidth so big that you can actually focus on all these things? I struggle just to produce this podcast and do my business myself. And it's much
Probably
simpler.
called having an an addictive personality, buddy.
Really?
We just have to channel our addiction towards something productive, right?
Man.
But the moment I feel like something is in a good spot, maybe this is good or bad, I don't know yet. Because I definitely stretch myself thin. But the moment I feel like something is in a good spot where, it's fairly automated and my involvement isn't as intensive anymore, I feel anxious because I'm like, what am I doing with my time? I don't feel productive anymore. So I go and try to figure out if there's opportunities on the horizon with, staying in this lane. I think fundamentally though, all the projects that I'm a part of, I want it to be something that adds value or it has meaning to the community. It's like neighborhood driven. It's there to, be a part of people's lives. I think, 595 is extremely rewarding because I've seen so many families and I've seen so many significant moments in other people's families happen at 595, and you can't replace those kinds of things, right? If we were to shut down, I'll always have friends coming in there and you know well, first of all, bringing children in there and then like having them speak their first words, having them learn how to cheers with water bottles, becoming future alcoholics,
I
these
know, right?
amazing moments like so I cherish all those things, dude, and I want to see if I can continue to replicate that with like our beliefs and our foundational pillars of what creates a good concept.
Yeah.
And I just told it to you. I just said it to you. It's good food, good service,
Ambiance.
good ambiance. That's I don't think there's a secret recipe or anything like that.
Right. But sometimes it seems like when people are opening up spots, their egos get in the way sometimes.
Yeah.
And they want to put their name or their specific taste when yes, it should be your taste in a way, but it can't be like, oh, you have to think of who is coming in the door.
Right.
Right. And I've noticed, with certain places that, you know, I won't be specific, but one of the places I was involved with, and they had people that had started up the place together, and one of the guy's daughter's name had to be in like in one of the retail sections of it, and it was like so and so's retail section, right? And I'm like, man, like who's that? And it's like, oh, that's the owner's daughter, and I'm like, well, if you're gonna have like wine retail, why wouldn't you work with like a purveyor and actually have them maybe help build your bar or whatever the legality is of that, and then put their name. So it's like, Stag Leap Corner, you know what I mean? Or whatever. And you make it like a wine corner, but it's like when you put a name that no one knows on because it was your own personal touch and you're trying to, but I'm like, now are you being is that bad business? Right? Because that's not thinking, I mean, like, yeah, it's your project.
If it works, it works. I mean, that's the beautiful thing of running a business, right? Is there's certain templates that you should adhere to, but the reality is, however you achieve success, you can do it on your own terms.
Yeah.
It's really whether or not the consumers respond well to that or not. And that's if there's one takeaway from that, excuse me, if there's one takeaway from this, it would be, opening up a concept and not achieving success immediately is not failure or success. It's just a chapter in where you're at. The customers will ultimately guide your decision making. And 595, we've gone through probably 3-4 iterations of our menu, right? And we should continue to be evolving. And it's evolved based on what we believe the customers are telling us to do. When we reopened 595 right out of the pandemic shutdown, with 25% occupancy and online ordering and takeout only and stuff like that, we didn't really get a lot of orders because, a lot of people perceive our menu as like bar food, and we're four doors north of Meraki, who we were seeing just like nonstop drivers coming in and out.
What's
They're a
Meraki?
Greek restaurant
Oh, okay.
on the other corner of our strip.
Is that because people assume it travels well, or is it
I
just
mean, I
like
think it's really good food, awesome food. Guys are really cool, B, I think there's a big Greek community, and I think there's a lot of support around that. But also, I think this just generally perceived to be healthier food, fresh food, and it does hold up well. Yeah, it's good for lunch and dinner.
I actually I was hanging out with someone here the other day, and we were looking up what we wanted. We're like, let's just Uber and watch a movie or something, or Uber Eats and watch a movie. And then I 595 can send here. And then once we were like talking about it, we're like, yeah, but that's 595. We should just go.
Yeah.
Then we're like, all right, let's go. And it was that quick. And we're like, it was just we went there, we had food, we left, we came back.
Awesome.
I had like one beer. But I do get it, but it's like I think it's more so that once I think of 595, I'm like, I'd really rather be there and have a beer. You know what I mean? So
Because like that, it's a neighborhood bar.
it really is.
And that's I'm very proud of, how that's been received by the community because I was very fearful that when we first opened up, people were like, "Oh, this dude's from San Diego, like fuck that guy," kind of situation. And
Yeah.
that's why I named it 595 is because I wanted to root us into the community right out of the gate. And 595 is Rainbow Boulevard. State Route 595 is Rainbow Boulevard. Before they started naming all those state routes, whatever the names are, they were all just numbers. And if you use Google now, it'll still tell you like make a right on SR 595 Rainbow Boulevard. So it'll still
Right.
say that. Um, so we were just looking in at that location specifically, and we did some research into the history of that area, and we went to the library at UNLV. My partner did, and just looked up some pictures in the archives, and that hallway inside of 595. It has pictures of the Stardust racetrack, which was where the Spanish Trails community is now. So back, I think, like in the mid 50s, it was a racetrack, and that's where Mario Andretti and Ferrari and those guys pulled their cars out and just raced.
Wow.
And it was like the first, if I remember correctly, it's the first Can-Am. That's where they hosted the very first Can-Am.
I'm not so versed on the rate. What's Can-Am?
Can-Am is a Canada something.
Like Canada and America, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's one of those sports I've never really followed. Like I mean, I watched the movies about them, like Ferrari versus Ford, which is awesome. And
Which, full disclosure, me neither. I only learned about it because that's the history that pulled up. And interestingly enough, like where 595 is located, we're located at the apex sixth turn. So there's like I forget how many turns there were in the racetrack, but we were the sixth, like at the tip of the sixth turn in the
yeah,
racetrack. So I was thinking about calling it Apex Craft and Kitchen, but that didn't ring as much. So we just settled in on 595. But that's an interesting story. Like that's when people come in, and we've had some people that have lived in that area decades ago, and they came in. They're like, "Oh my God! Like, how'd you find all these?" Like, they would point out their cars, like, "I was on that team," kind of thing.
wow.
So it was really cool to see that the history does exist there. But I think Vegas is so easy with revising. And if things don't work out, they'll just demo it or rebuild something else, and things will get lost in translation. But there is still a lot of history in this city.
Well, it's got to be rewarding when you like, okay, I'm gonna actually put some like a lot of thought into this. I'm gonna, you're planning out like just wall. It's not paint. You're putting mural type stuff,
Yeah,
right? But then you have people actually acknowledge it and go, wasn't a waste of my
yeah.
time, right?
So I think the hope was, that people see the passion and the effort being put into that place that would compel them to root themselves into that space, and be part of the community. And like I said, I'm really proud of how that's come to be. A big part of that, though, is, going back to the basics of the business for me, is, having really amazing people that, really genuinely care about human interaction and, have built real relationships with the regulars. I mean, we hang out with our regulars all the time outside of work too. I know like my other bar manager Matt. He hangs out with our regulars. He goes snowboarding and skiing with them up on Mount Charleston.
I love that.
He and his wife or partner situation. Hopefully Matt watches this. No, they were groundskeepers up in Mount Charleston or Lee Canyon.
Oh, okay.
So they would sleep there for like 3-4 months out of the year and just be on the grounds, and then he would just drive to work. So he would invite our regulars and stuff on the mountain, and they just hang out. So it's really
That's a
cool.
sign of a good bartender is when their regulars are their friends
Yeah.
too, like outside. I I always credit like Capital Grill. When I worked there, I met so many people that are part of my life now. So when you care about the guests and the community around who like your regulars, the people that are entering in and paying to be there more than once or twice in their life, you're like, oh, this is cool. You get to know people, and then they start treating you. They come in like you get gifts sometimes, like hey, Merry Christmas, and you're like, really, and it's surprising sometimes when how much you can mean to someone and like just being the guy that hands them the beer, the girl that hands them the beer, and listens to their day for a minute.
Yeah.
Really
Well, let
creates.
me share this with you. We just got a we got a message from somebody on Instagram, and his he was at the hospital a few weeks ago,
Okay.
and his mother got into an accident and ultimately passed away, unfortunately.
Oh no.
But so he went to Able Baker as kind of like an escape while he was there for the weeks that she was in the hospital, and he just came in as like kind of a getaway, and we didn't know about it, but
Right.
we were just taking care of our people, and then he sent us a message on Monday, and he kind of told us what it meant to him. So it was really special. He said he was going through a lot. His mother has been in the hospital after a car accident for a few weeks, and she ultimately passed away. It was a difficult time, but during those 2 weeks, he stopped into Able Baker, and it became a bit of a safe haven for him. And every day that he came in, he would be given such amazing service, and they didn't know what he was going through, but just to feel that genuine connection, it was comforting, and that warmth, along with much needed beer or two, is what helped him get through those days. And he said, "Thank you for creating such a space, or thank you for creating such a welcoming space. It truly made a difference." And I was like, I woke up with kind of like an attitude because I was like, man, like labor's high. We had food costs coming in, it was high. Like we were doing our P&Ls, and then I got that message, and I was like, completely turned my day around.
Nice.
I was like, it's a stark reminder of like how much impact you can have on somebody's life just by being a decent human being.
Yeah.
You know.
Just taking an extra step, giving a little bit
Yeah.
of care and thoughtfulness, and it's not, and again, it doesn't have to be extra special. Like you didn't know the guy.
Yeah.
You just did your
Interact with
job very
somebody with
well.
some so with some genuine happiness and some being compassionate. I still think it does go a long way.
We talk about that a lot on this podcast is enthusiasm when you're working behind a bar, not just for your own psyche, but for the guests. Like there's such a difference between like, hey, welcome and hi, welcome. It's like just smiling while you talk to them and stuff. They're like, oh, okay, I like this place. Or, like, what's there? So it's those little things that, really separate a person that's like a hospitality professional or they're just doing a job.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
transactional, right? Versus
Exactly.
relationship.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that starts with the top. You have to create a culture that like encourages and cultivates that. You can't have leaders in a company that don't care about that human interaction and are so numbers driven and all these things, and then expect the employees that they're managing to still embody what we believe to be a great concept, which is again caring about the people, providing good service, right, putting out great product, ambiance, vibe. You can't have all those things if you have miserable people. I challenge my staff all the time. I ask them, think about this is how important service is. I had 2 reviews come in the same day. That was like a couple hours of each other within the first couple months that we opened up 595. One review came in and said, the food was excellent. Sat at the bar, sorry. Food was excellent. Sat at the bar, had good beers, but the bartender seemed like he was more occupied hanging out with his friends and talking with his friends than taking care of us.
Yikes.
Review, 2 stars. We had a review come in 2 hours after that, and they said, we came in, we had a chicken sandwich, it was kind of burnt, and we, sent it back, but the server was so amazing, they were so hospitable, we'll chalk it up to them just trying to figure their stuff out. 4 stars for that. In my mind, quality is one of the most important things in my mind, but it's evident to me that, people are much more likely to be forgiving when they have somebody that they feel like have a personal connection with, and they don't want to like alienate or bastardize or damage somebody's reputation, But if you don't have that connection, then there's no reason for them to be empathetic.
Absolutely.
So,
And you have to open the door too. Some people are conditioned now to not being talkative because they feel like the bartender. Like I noticed service across the board in other states everywhere has just it's not as I'm pleasantly surprised when I have good service now. You know what I mean? Because it's just like something's kind of been lost in the last few years. So when you hear about stories like what you did for that gentleman at Able Baker, and you hear about these, you're like, oh, thank God, there's still some people out there that care. And again, it's like it doesn't mean that you have to be like, I love bartending, I love making drinks. You don't have to, but you just have to like talking to people. You have to enjoy the natural conversation, and like there's like a lot of there's nothing wrong with knowing a spiel and having kind of like a thing that you say to everybody. Obviously, you want to switch it up a little bit to not sound so robotic, but there's something to be said. Like you don't like it's a lot less on. Obviously, knowledge is great, and it's very important to have good knowledge of your products and everything. But more than knowledge is sincerity. It is just being like, and like I don't know stuff on my bar sometimes. You know, at Bramare, Oscar's brought on such cool spirits, and Constantine has brought on such cool spirits that there's a couple I was like, oh, I'm not sure what that is. You know, and but instead of trying to pretend or fake it, I'm just like, well, let's figure it out together. And I pour a little sample, and we kind of talk about it and taste it together. I don't charge them for that taste, you know, and that's kind of that always translates to people as like, oh man, they're not nickel and diming me. Like they want me to experience it. Oh, I didn't like that, and it's I'll pay for it. And you're like, no, you're good. You know,
Because the places that we are passionate about and that we feel good working at, those places are more focused on creating experiences than creating transactions, which again, like they kind of go hand in hand. But,
Yeah.
you're going to come into the restaurant, you're going to be paying for something, right? Versus going to a gaming bar, you're going in with the prospect of potentially getting a free meal or paying $900 for a beer. You know what I mean?
Right.
So here it's like it's pretty straightforward what the purpose of you being here is. So for us, it's like you're paying us. Why not make it memorable? Why not make it an experience where somebody's gonna walk away thinking, "No, we want to come back." These are all the things that I learned through In and Out.
It's funny. Like it's funny. Like some of the first jobs that you do in life teach you so much, and some of it's just because you haven't done things like that before. Like I always talk about Carrabba's. It's essentially like a slightly step up on Olive Garden. If some wouldn't even agree with that, but and I remember kind of like now you're like, ooh yeah, I worked there, and it's not like there's nothing wrong with it, but some of the standards and like chains have a lot like things that people don't like about them because I can go anywhere and find this, but that's also like those consistency and those setup systems that kind of ensure that even if it's not like wow this knocked my socks off, but you're like oh I came in here, the soup is always good, that I get this dish every time, it's the same thing, it's great, so I just think those initial jobs that you learn these like life skills from. And I also think that it should be a finishing, like to get your diploma. I think you should like senior year, you have to work for like one shift a week at a host stand or something. And just live and just have that experience with all these people coming in, and you get people that are mad when they walk in the door. You get people that are really excited, and you're starting them off on their evening. But it's like you deal with so many people that and like seeing how that works, it actually trains you for things in life. Like I think the service industry is a good way to get a handle on a lot of how the world works and meeting people because everyone eats. So
It's a case study on human behavior. Right?
exactly, yeah,
And I think that's a skill that's largely getting lost with the increased reliance on technology. And you see how
we haven't even scratched the
how
surface yet,
socially
right?
I don't know, but you see how different like the I guess the natural social interactions you have. You see how different that is with people in our age group versus people in their 20s and even the younger kids.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me because throughout these years I've had a handful of employees that are like in their teens and early 20s, and again, just they're so intelligent in certain ways, but then they also have such deficiencies in like some real world skills. And what we've become over these past few years for those employees are kind of like mentors. Like we're developing them and we're training them and we're helping them acclimate to the real world because they're interacting with people on such a different, like such a broad spectrum of age groups, right? So,
Yeah.
we have bar manager, we have people in their 50s, 40s, 30s, and so on. So, they're getting interactions and they're getting, real life experience with all types of personalities and things like that. So, what I feel good about is that we have a positive work environment, we have a good culture, and we establish respect and dignity with all the people that we work with, and so they get to be a part of something where we do have high standards. You do have to work hard. You do have to be able to grind and have resilience. So you learn all these things, and And then while you're doing all that, you get to see the interactions of people that have lived a much longer life than you have, and you get to assimilate.
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing. One of one of the most memorable experiences I've had with one of my employees was, he was 18 years old when I hired him for the back of house, and his dad passed away when he was young, so he was basically is him and two younger siblings, but he was more or less kind of like the man of the house, taking care of his younger siblings while his mom was working, and so he was referred to me by a bartender, Terry. I can't remember, Terry Clark.
Oh wow, yeah.
So he
Brings
was
back an
referred to
old
me
school
by
name.
Terry, and he was like, "Yeah, it's my neighbor. The kid's a super good kid. He just needs a job. He's working at Taco Bell right now." I was like, "Dude, if you're putting your stamp on him, bring him in." And he's like, "Yeah, he's a 4.0 GPA kid. Like, got his head on straight and all these things." So I interviewed him and I said, "Hey, so Terry told me you're a 4.0 GPA student and you want to do all these things." He's like, "Well, that's not true. I had a 3.17 GPA," and I was like, the honesty of this kid, dude, I love it. And you could tell he's just like sheltered, socially awkward, but he's like genuine and honest.
Right.
And we ultimately, brought him in. And after a few months of him working there, his mom came in and was like, "Hey, just want to let you guys know, I'm not sure what you guys are doing here, but he's coming out of his shell and he's talking and he's becoming a man, and I'm so proud of him, and I can't tell you like how much that means to me." And I was like, if I had any tears left in my eyeballs, like I'd
Right.
be crying right now.
Dang.
It was
Yeah.
like such a heartwarming moment, and we got to see him, go get his college certifications, and his passion was to become a deep sea diving welder. And I know it's so unique, right?
Yeah.
And so, he went to school and got his welding certifications, and he moved on. And he's like I said, he's doing really well.
Did he
So
end up getting to be a deep sea
I
diving
haven't talked to him in a couple
welder?
years. I tried hitting him up on the Instagram, but I think he deactivated his account. So,
Hey, you.
but you hope you wish him well.
Yeah, that
But
sounds great. Like,
yeah,
I
so
love to
there's
hear
there's been
those
a
kind of
couple
people.
there's been a couple younger people that have worked with us, and we've had some really great success with just helping them grow and helping them learn about the real world and things like that. And a couple of those guys are doing really well, like that guy. And then we have another kid. He was going to school for audio visual or something like that, but he became a rigger, and he goes on tour with like some really really well known bands like Andre Bocelli, Primus, and things like that. So it's pretty rad.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love this town because there's so many opportunities all over the place. Like, you just never know. And that's the other thing about bartending and serving and having guests in front of you, like from all walks of life. You never know when you're meeting your future boss.
Oh yeah, it's
Like
crazy, man.
I can't tell you how many jobs I've been offered, and like, I keep my hair pretty like a tight fade. So a lot of people are like, "Are you in the military?" And you want to work for our financial company, and it's just like, dude, this doesn't seem like me at all. But
Yeah,
they're like, "Oh, you just want someone that's kind of sincere and and hardworking." And when you work hard behind the bar, it's very easy to see and
yeah,
watch. So it translates to them like, wow, he or she will probably be great at any job because
right.
they're just a work ethic. I wanted to, so real quickly. So this is at 595. It's a brand that I help, promote, AngeVert from Alpine Distilling. But you have it in the Queen Bee cocktail there as a modifier. But I end up going in there and just getting this soda water and a lemon squeeze
Mm,
because it's low ABV. As I get older and as I'm trying to be responsible and never get behind the wheel having more than like a drink, a beer, maybe. Now I actually just Uber in general. But if I wanted to go there and have two drinks, you can't really have two drinks and get behind the wheel. But if you go low ABV or a sessionable drink, this is only 24% ABV. So it goes down to just a light aperitif. And that's kind of where my palate's been going, is like light, easy to drink, sort of like, you know, how I feel about a lager. I'm looking for low ABV cocktails as well that I can, go and have too. Feel like I was there. I did it. I did like the evening was more than just sustenance.
mm-hmm.
But then also still feel really safe about getting behind the wheel because those two drinks didn't even or just barely equated to like what would be one
Right.
standard cocktail. You know.
Yeah.
but I was gonna make one for myself while you're talking. I wanted to ask, so Able Baker, so you had opened 595, and then you go to Able Baker to open up the kitchen for them.
No, so interesting story with Randy, who's the the operating manager of Able Baker. He's the main guy. When we first opened up 595, he was it was around the same time that he started up Able Baker, but they were a contract brewery at that point. So meaning that they would just get beer made and the brewery would slap a label on the kegs and then they would just go out and sell that beer to the market. And back then, they had Joseph James, who the brewery closed down during COVID, unfortunately.
I remember Joseph James. I had not thought of that name in many years. I forgot.
So during that time, they had Joseph James make beer for them, and they would go out on the market and they would try to get into accounts. When they approached us, it was around the time that we first opened, and we were one of the first accounts that put on the Atomic Duck, and that was a permanent handle that I gave them. So I told them it reminded me of my favorite beers in San Diego, and I would love to have them there because it's like it's a staple for me, and so I became close with Randy because of that. Because I just wanted to give support to the local community, and so he started coming in there as a consumer, and we just hang out, we talk a little bit here and there, and then he came in one day and said he was all in on the business, so he left his job as a bartender at the Win. So he said if we ever needed somebody to fill in shifts or whatever, that he would pick up shifts because he can use extra cash while he's like trying to figure out how to get Able Baker funded to build out a brewery.
Yeah.
So he worked with me for a couple months at 595, and during that time, he saw how I, governed the business, my communication and how I try to build the team up and the things that I'm focused on how we push forward as a restaurant. And he liked a lot of those things. He said that,
I mean, it's how I want to work for you. God,
I
it sounds
appreciate it.
nice.
Thank you. But it's hard work, but I'll say I can be a dick though. I'll just put it out there.
Hey, you're not a good operator if you don't have that in you.
Right, because when the standards aren't met, I get frustrated, and I always try to get to the bottom of why or what's causing that discrepancy. But going back to the Randy thing, so after a couple months of him working there, he came in one day and said, "Hey, dude, I think I have investors. I think I have the people that are going to put money in to build out the brewery, and we want to do food, and I don't want to do it with anybody other than you, dude. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm interested. Where's this at?" He's like, "It's going to be in the arts district." So we went and walked the site, and I was like, "Dude, this is kind of unreal."
Yeah.
Because I was only open for like maybe a year and a half by that point. So I opened up in June of 2017, and he came to me and told me that there was an opportunity to build like fall of 2018. So it's literally like a little over a year that I opened, and then I was like focused, and then I was moving on to a second project.
Wow.
So it was kind of like a unreal, very surreal moment, So that's how we partnered up, and then he introduced me to his investment group, and they kind of got to know me, got to know my philosophy and my values and things like that. And then we all went down to San Diego and did brewery tours to kind of pull apart things about the breweries that we thought would do well in at Able Baker, and also get an idea of like how to create a community environment. And main takeaway was have big open space. Don't do booths. Have just big benches where people have to sit down and make friends with a stranger.
Yeah.
And just have very friendly and pleasant people to be around.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so my dad always said, Mikey, don't go into restaurants because 30% of them are successful or whatever. How long, since you've opened a few different, I mean, I know it's not all restaurants per se, but it's like you've opened several different concepts. How long are you, like when you opened 595, how long did you expect to be like in the red, as they say, or not necessarily profitable because you have to pay back all the things to build that place? And if this is a rude question, please let me know. But I'm just curious, like, is it a time you're like, well, it's going to take a year before we're in profit, or is there a formula? Is there an expectation?
I guess there's a difference between like getting your money back on the investment and being profitable, like from a like a month to month basis. Our month to month, we were profitable pretty much like after the first month.
Wow. Okay.
Because, well, I was working, every single day. And I went through three chefs that in like the first month and a half, and then after the third chef, I was like, I'm, I'm over the talent here. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna take on like being the kitchen manager and the chef myself and figure it out while I figure all the other shit out. Because I'm tired of having this rotating doors of leaders that are supposed to be, driving the ship, but are so problematic and lack such fundamental or basic skills as a professional that I'm just gonna end up doing it myself anyways.
Well, you sounds like you have insane, like unreasonable standards, but insanely like I have standards. This is what I want.
Yeah.
You're a data driven guy, which I really appreciate. Because like I said, it's like I do love when someone's like, oh, this is my imagination, this is my dream, and then they don't actually look at the analytics of it,
Yeah.
and then they wonder why did they struggle or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like, well, what's your clientele around here? What's the neighborhood like? What's the age group? All plays into what kind of a place you're
I
building.
think that background is what gave me the runway to figure out the rest because I didn't really know. Like I said, I didn't understand bartending. I didn't understand serving, but those are like not to like take away from what you guys all do, but those are relatively easy positions to understand. Now, executing cocktails at a high level, that's a different thing. But being able to perform the basic functions as a bartender and as a server when it comes to like service side
You can,
communication, I picked up on that quickly.
right.
I could go and take somebody's order and
Yeah,
conversate
go
with
talk
them
to
and
them,
things
be
like that.
friendly,
Yeah,
take the order.
yeah.
Once eventually you start driving a table as you get experience, but at the end of the day, it's
So I
you
learned
start off
about
as a
all those
relative.
things relatively quickly. It's the bartending, like specifically making cocktails and learning how to like be efficient with the station. All
Yeah.
those things are the things
Do
that
it
I
with
picked up.
pizzazz,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And feeling natural behind the bar.
Yeah.
You know,
Which
those
is just a
things took a
time
little bit
thing,
longer.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And so once I became a little bit more proficient with those things, I felt comfortable enough to, you know, to put those standards in place. Whereas before, I was just leaning on other people for their vision and their experience. And then once I started seeing with repetition, I said, "This isn't quite right. I'm gonna change this up or whatever," And that became especially true in the kitchen, where the only concept of managing in a kitchen was In and Out Burger. So I applied those
But I
same
mean, God, the
principles.
efficiency of In and Out. So that had to be like, okay, this is how we do
Yeah,
it.
I was very metric. I was very like efficiency focused, and it was about engineering the menu so that way there's no waste. And if you look at it now, like there are some cross utilization of ingredients and things like that. I would say like Fresno chilies is probably overutilized on that menu, but it's a good flavor profile.
Yeah.
But we created some items because we just were looking at the waste and like the garbage nachos. Those are one of the top selling items on our menu now, but it came about because of the amount of like little bits of proteins that we were throwing away because we were chopping up chicken and things for like the chicken sandwich. So there's like little bits and like bits of that.
Sure.
And so I was like, the first couple months, I was eating like probably 10 pounds of fucking pork belly. And I was like, dude, what the fuck am I gonna do with that? Like, I'm gaining weight. I'm working 12 hours a day.
That's crazy.
So, we just sat down one day. I was like, why don't we just fucking make nachos? We didn't have chips. We just brought in chips. And, we served it to some customers. They liked it so much that they kept ordering it. And then, we said, let's just throw this on the menu. And it became such a popular item that we started prepping, whole slabs, pork bellies, and chicken and stuff like that for that item and not for like, the banh mi's and stuff. So, it's like I said, it's responding to what the customers are telling you should do, right?
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
was bred out of necessity, but then it became so popular that we needed to pivot and just go all in on that.
Was that kind of was Able Baker a similar story where you're pretty got to where you're not like where you were profitable relatively quickly, or was that more of a
So
slog
keep
because
in
it's
mind, we
different?
opened up September of 2019, so we were only around 6 months,
God, yeah.
and then COVID. But yes, we were profitable the first couple months, and then it slowed down in November. So September, October, we opened up like late September. So realistically, month number one was October. So yeah, we were profitable in October, but then November, December rolled around, kind of took a nosedive because just the city kind of gets quiet during this time of the year. Um, and then January we came, was popping. February was great. March
Dear
was
Lord.
awesome until fucking St. Patty's Day. And I always remember it as St. Patty's Day is the day we shut down
Wow.
because I made like fucking 100 pounds of corned beef, right? To celebrate. And then guess who fucking didn't get to sell 100 pounds of corned beef?
Oh man.
This guy. Guess who had to eat a bunch of fucking corned beef, dude?
Wow. Did you do like friends and like all the
Dude,
the,
yeah,
the
we
crew?
absolutely did.
Here's a gift package.
Yeah, it
I
was,
know that's something that no one really talks about is when that shutdown happened, the amount of waste that every single restaurant incurred, and like, man, you don't even people. I haven't even thought about this in years. That everyone was getting like they're like here, take it. It's gonna go bad before we can eat it.
yeah, no, I that's what I did with 595 and the brewery was we basically started giving away like I ordered like a bunch of rice and beans and things like that, and I just ordered like 4 or 5 bags, like 200 pounds from the food distributor because there's a shortage in pretty much everything at that time, if you remember. So it was crazy, right? Like we kind of like compartmentalized that and forgot how chaotic the world was. Like there was a
Yeah.
shortage of toilet paper, soap, sanitizer. Like
I'll never understand. The
it's
toilet paper
insane, dude.
thing. I still to this day don't get the toilet paper thing.
So I bought a bunch of staples and things like that are shelf stable because I wanted to give it to our staff,
Wow.
and like vendors and stuff like that. So I was just thinking like, dude, I don't know how this is gonna play out, but here's like we'll just use this as a commissary. So I gave away as much as I could, and all the fresh produce and stuff like that. If I wasn't able to freeze it, we would just do family meals to deplete or give it to like whoever was in need.
Yeah, there was a lot. You know what's funny that another thing that doesn't get talked about is the kindness that we did get to see,
Yeah.
and the amount of support, and some of the, for that matter, the brands too came out and spent a lot of their marketing dollar on. It'd be like, oh, like I know Frey Ranch was big on make us a video, we'll send you $500. You know what I mean? You're like, dang, like how can they afford that now? Well, I learned that they make a fortune on selling alfalfa to India, and the alcohol is sort of like a passion pet project of theirs that turned out well. But man, it really did. I don't think there was a city that got hit harder, like economically, by COVID because we're so dependent on tourism. And like, dude, the craziest thing was seeing videos of my friends skateboarding down the completely vacant
yeah, I saw
vacant
those videos.
strip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're like, sort of like if I was a skateboarder, you'd have to do that. You're like, this is the only time in life we'll ever get to do this. 100%. So there was some cool things that were happening as a byproduct of the shutdown. But man, like thinking of the thousands of jobs that just
It's like a Twilight
gone.
Zone, though, isn't it? It's fucking crazy.
Crazy. Like people don't understand like the vastness and how many, like, what is there, 20,000 bartenders in this town, maybe more. You know what I mean?
There's more. There's got to be more.
Okay, you would know better. Like 50,000, or is it like?
I don't know. I read somewhere that there was like 250,000 food and beverage employed people in this city.
Dang, yeah. So that's nuts.
Yeah.
And you're just like, bam, gone. You know.
Fact check me. Somebody tell me yes or no.
Yeah,
But
right.
I read it's like 250,000. It might include like hotel staff too and all that.
Right.
But that was
Like
that was the number that I got thrown out there. I think that's 250,000 people that are in the culinary union. But
That makes
like I
sense.
said, it's-
That makes sense. I mean, it's funny because when they were like teasing like another lockdown, Vegas was like, dude, we can't. Like, I don't care what and we obviously found out the lockdowns weren't the smart thing to do. But before we knew that as a society, like they were like, if we shut down, Vegas will fall into disarray. Like we can't stay. We had so many people. I can't imagine a city that got hit harder. Like obviously, like you have LA and New York are not only health wise because they're so packed in there, but they have a huge like beverage and food scene. But like nothing is
the
as
economy
reliant.
is much more diverse. right?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think you're right in that. We're so reliant on food and beverage and retail and entertainment that shutting that down. It's like kind of like it was reminiscent of the 2008, 2007 conditions.
Really though.
I think there's a lot more resilience in the city now because there has been development in other industries.
Well, think of the food. The food alone. Like thinking of delivery now. Like I bet you a lot more restaurants, and you could tell me. And you said like 595's like to go food isn't necessarily as
Well, it wasn't. So yeah, we went on a long tangent.
Right.
So let's get back to that shit, huh?
yeah.
So that's what I mean by like evolving your business, right? When we first reopened up, we weren't really getting much takeout orders because Meraki, and we're looking at them, they have people coming in and out like nonstop for like 12 hours. And they told me that they were making more money because of the shutdown than if they were just to open regularly because they stripped like half of their crew.
No returns.
Yeah.
No, very low labor
Yeah.
costs.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that since then, how many ghost kitchens exist now? You know what I
There's a
mean?
lot now.
You're
So,
like, oh, Joe Schmo's, burgers,
yeah.
and you're like, oh, where is this place? I haven't heard of it. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's that little door at that strip mall, and it also has an Asian food and a Moroccan food
Right.
at the same location.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, three kitchens?
Yep.
And I mean, so there's been new entrepreneurial opportunities out of it.
Yeah.
But I look at it, like I worked at Fleming's when we first came out of the pandemic because I was working at Nora's, and then Nora's had like two seats at the bar, and it was just untenable to be a bartender there anymore, like, and make money for several months. So I was like, hey, like, don't ask me to come back, please, because I need to, like, I have my mortgage, I have all these things. If you brought me back and I'm making $100 a day, now it's like less than if I
I'm getting
was,
shafted, dude.
you know what I mean? Than I when we were getting the assistance.
Yeah.
But the the like the effect that food can now, I'm like, man, if you don't have a good to go business, you're like, why even have a restaurant? Because there's so much access to, like, Uber Eats is so easy to do now. And I'm like, man, your food, that has to help your food cost and waste immensely,
It
having
does.
a big
I
to
think
go.
so. So we added rice to our menu. We'd had added rice bowls to our menu because of that, because we weren't getting orders like for takeout, and so we're like, well, my my gamble or my hypothesis at the time was, maybe we don't have enough like wholesome meals, like or
Yeah.
composed dishes. It's like a lot of like sandwiches and burgers, fries, and stuff like
Well,
that.
that is literally my food. Like,
Yeah.
I sustain myself off of burgers, fries, and sandwiches.
Yeah,
So
but I guess families don't, and especially within people
100%.
within like a 2 mile radius of 595. So we said let's see if we can add rice bowls and these kind of like plates and plate lunches and stuff to the menu and see how that performs. And um, being 595, I didn't want to just do rice. I said I'm gonna do something and like make like a chicken rice or like add some mushroom powder to it to make it more like umami flavored. So I was, trying to just distinguish ourselves from any other like Asian restaurant that serves like rice bowls or like rice, like fried rice and stuff.
Yeah.
So when we released it, people came in, started getting it. It got great feedback, and then we launched on DoorDash like we launched on DoorDash right after the like COVID reopen, like they allowed us to reopen, but then we didn't add rice bowls until like maybe 2 3 months in. So it was like June, July. I don't know if you remember, but like that shutdown, we had restrictions in place for like 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy,
I mean,
right?
I think
To
California
think
is
about it.
still in a state of emergency over COVID right now.
They're forever in states of emergencies. If it's not like
What's the
COVID related
emergency
shit,
today? Like,
yeah.
which one will you not have?
So, us pivoting to add rice to the menu and like having more wholesome dishes and things like that.
And filling,
that was
right?
And filling.
Well, I mean, your food is outstanding. I can't get over it.
Yeah,
I
well, thank
love
you,
it so
man.
much.
I mean, we are a scratch kitchen. We don't have a freezer, so we get fresh ingredients in. We have to prep and sell everything within like 2 3 days because
That's a big deal, not having a
simply
freezer.
yeah. And we simply don't have enough space to be able to like store product for longer than a few days worth, anyways. Especially with like the last few years, our volumes increased significantly. So, it's a very involved operation now. But the result speaks for itself. Is that we have really fresh product. But to your point of third party delivery, we didn't really lean into third party delivery all in until probably like 5 months ago, because I just never was a believer of it.
Me too.
I'm like, most of my food is like hot food or French fries, chips, and things like that.
They
Those
don't travel
don't travel
well. They get soggy on the way.
and I don't want somebody ordering it and then getting it to them after 30 minutes
Absolutely.
of waiting and then thinking that that's like our standard. Like that's not a good reflection of who we are, right? So I was always hesitant about it. And then I finally was like, you know what, we need to lean into it. Our costs are increasing, but we can't fit any more people in here because we only have 60 seats.
Yeah.
So how do we scale? So we said let's lean into third party delivery and figure this whole thing out. So we we launched Uber Eats and DoorDash, and then we started marketing with it, did advertising, put up more sophisticated pictures, made it more seamless and intuitive for people to order and get product to them. And so we went from doing, I don't know, like maybe 2-3 orders a night on
Wow.
average,
Yeah.
like to like 20 orders.
Boom.
Like it's become on average 15 to 20% of our revenue.
That's what I'm saying
Right
right
now.
there.
It's
If you
crazy.
don't have a good to go, you're wasting so much
Yeah,
revenue.
because I mean, before in the four walls, you can fit 60 people in there at any given time. But you open up to third party delivery, then you now catering to the 65,000
city,
people
right.
around the 2 mile radius or whatever. You know what I mean?
And it's funny because you're talking about like we didn't want to do it, and I never was a believer, which I wasn't. I want to say two things. I got jaded because, like I said, I came back and I went to Fleming's, and I loved Fleming's. Like I'm a hustler. So at the time there was a bar, his name's Matty, or a bartender named Matt. He's a great guy. And he just didn't really want to like be a server. And I'm like, I don't care. I am here to make money. So I'm taking tables and I'm doing all this. And then they're like, yeah, the bartenders also do to-goes. And you're like, okay, so now I need the tables to make money, but you have to do the to-goes. Uber Eats and DoorDash, you don't get the tip. So you're like, and that's the other thing you have to deal with is you like a bartender that's used to getting tips. Now you have me doing this to go, and I'm spending all this time, and I'm literally not giving as good a service to my guests. Plus, I'm not going to get a tip from the Uber Eats driver. You know what I mean? So it's like you're like kind of begrudgingly putting it in, and then like so then one day I'm at again Fleming's, believe it or not, had a huge to go business. I am, but you know it's like the same thing you're saying. Hey, I don't want this food to be represented this way, but people just don't care anymore. Like people are just like, oh, they're cold and soggy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't care. I remember like this order was like lobster tails, and the order sat there probably an hour and a half, and they still came and then the people came and got it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's lobster tails and steak in there. Like, and you can't be mad because it's your own fault. They were super late. We were like calling them. They're like, yeah, we're on our way soon. And then one time I go to put in, like, I'm like, oh, I'll help this lady out, this Uber Eats driver, I think it was DoorDash specifically. And I'm bringing her bags to the car to help load her car. Cause it was like Fleming's, people ordering 16 things, and she had her daughter in the front seat. The car was packed to the gills with like just garbage. And then I like slide the bags in, and they're like, oh, right next to her feet. And she's like, the daughter like slides her feet over, and I put it down, and I'm like, I will never order to go. And I mean, that was 2020. But like, so now I feel like the other thing I wanted to say was things have completely changed as far as the app working well, the communication, the speed at which it happens, and like the transparency. And then when you get it, like your stuff is like the bags are now made for like Uber to go, where it's sealed, and it's, you can have like a whole meal in one sealed bag. That makes me feel very confident it's not tampered with or touched.
The evolution of third party delivery and the takeout food, like the takeout culture and all that, it's astounding to me, and it's not going to go away either.
No.
But everything that you said is absolutely true. Like going back to the volume and it becoming basically like a component of the operation that nobody ever anticipated. That exact thing happened with us at 595, and so I told my managers, hey, we're going to have to carve out a position specifically for this, because you're right, the bartenders, being so occupied with packaging, 2-3 orders every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes or so is extremely disruptive to them giving an experience. So we basically had to train our backhouse employees to now become outside expo and food packagers. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's evolving, right? It's adapting to what the customers tell you need to do.
1,000%. And the only problem with this format of 90 minutes is we run out of time so quickly, and I'm like, man, I want to hear so much more, and especially because I know you have another project or two like down the pipeline. But let's close out now. And maybe I can get you back on to carry on with this, because I'm loving where the progress of what you've been doing and kind of your philosophy on owning a business is probably excellent information for anyone thinking about going into any of your different concepts, which they're completely vastly different from each other. So it's really cool.
Tip number one, don't do it.
Yeah, but like, I mean,
if
if you look at this success story,
I mean, you can't do this for all these years and not be a little bit jaded. You know, we're talking about all the positive things, but the reality is, 90% of it is you getting dragged through shit. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of struggles, and if you don't have resilience, I think, if you're not in there for the right reason because of passion and things like that, don't do it.
Right. Like, yeah, you have
You
to.
can make money. You can make a lot more money doing other things.
Yeah, but I'm glad you're one of the people doing it,
Yeah,
and I appreciate you.
I'm passionate.
And I
So,
can't wait to be back at 595. Have another
cheers.
bond me.
Yeah, thank you, man.
All right, man. It's been
Appreciate you
great.
having me.
Absolutely.
Good.